Being alive is hard sometimes. Um, Getting stuff done when the news is making you crazy, also hard sometimes. That's what's hard for me right now. For you, there may be tons of other things going on. It's also hard for me because my dad died recently. Like there's just a lot of hard things going on and they're compounding. And you may find yourself at times, it may be this time, it may be sometime in the future, it may have been times in the past where it's just hard. Life is just hard, and it feels like it's not getting any easier, and you're not sure what to do, and you still have to be productive. You still have to get things done. You still have to, feed your kids and take your dog out for a walk and do your actual job and all of the things. And it just feels really hard. And so I want to share with you some strategies. I know a few weeks ago I shared some strategies around, how to maintain your mental health while staying an informed citizen during these times. But I want to take this out a little broader, and I want to share with you seven different strategies that you can use when times are hard to kind of redefine what productivity means for you, to still manage to get things done that you need to get done, but to do so with less stress, with less pressure, and with more of reality in mind, right? And taking care of yourself, knowing that we're not always going to be at our best at all times. And what can we do when that is not the case, right? Or when that is the case, rather. So, what strategies can you use? First one is to understand what you can control and what you can't. Now, this is a big one. This is something I talk about with my coaching clients, whether that's my one-on-one clients or in my time well spent coaching program. This is something that we talk about all the time because if you are trying to control things that you cannot control, not only is this a losing battle, but it's super stressful. So, getting clear on what are the things you can control and what are the things that you just can't, no matter as much as you wish you could, what are those things can be really valuable. Sometimes it's just writing this down that's actually helpful. At a base level, the only thing you can control is your own actions and reactions, right? That's at the base level. Um, and you may worry about this because sometimes our what we call our kind of sphere of concern, the things we care about, is a lot bigger than our sphere of influence, what we can actually control. And this doesn't really feel very good, let's admit it. But understanding that, recognizing that is going to help us to maintain our reserves of energy, of brain power, to focus on the things that we actually can control instead of spinning our wheels trying to control things that we cannot control. There are a couple of quotes that I have repeated to myself many times over many years, and I want to share them here with you. One of them I learned at an HR conference. There was a monk speaking at an HR conference many years ago, and he said, if you can do something about it, why worry? And if you can't do something about it, why worry? And I thought, easier said than done, but I come back to this all the time. If I can do something about it, let me do something about it. And if I can't do something about it, I'm going to try my hardest not to worry about it. There's another quote that I often repeat to myself as well, which is if it's out of your hands, it should be out of your head, which is essentially means the same thing, right? If there's nothing you can do about it, then spending that time and energy worrying about it is not actually helping you and may actually be hurting you because you could be spending your limited and valuable time and resources on other things. So that's strategy number one is control what you can control and really know the difference. Now, strategy number two is going to be to shrink the timeline. It can be really easy, and I fall prey to this all of the time, to to essentially start thinking about the future, right? Start speculating what might happen based on what's happening now. But if we can instead kind of shrink the timeline and not focus on these long-term consequences of what's happening, but instead focus on this hour, this day, the next small win, the next goal that we have, that can help us to feel more in control of what's going on because we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we have a better idea of what we can do today. Now, strategy number three is to redefine or to reframe productivity, right? When things are tough, when there's a lot going on, when you don't have the mental space for everything, it can be really helpful to reframe what productivity means. And when things are tough, when times are tough, sometimes productivity is just staying afloat, right? It's not getting ahead and beyond. It's just staying afloat. And if you can redefine that for yourself and say, you know what, in these bad times, just staying afloat, that's good enough for me. That's what I'm going to strive for. You will feel better about things, right? Um, I often think of my own definition of productivity. And this is that productivity is doing what I intended to do. And so when times get tough, intend to do less, right? If you intend to do less and you still do it, then you are still productive because you're doing what you intended to do. Now, strategy number four, embrace good enough, right? Good enough is my action. I mean, this is all times, all times. This is my favorite phrase. I love good enough because to me, good enough means exactly what it is. It's not settling. It's not doing things at a subpar level. It's doing things at the level that is good enough for whatever that is. Now, different things in your life are going to have different levels of good enough, right? I work with people who create the software for, write the code for self-driving cars. Good enough has to be really, really good for that. I work with surgeons. Good enough has to be really, really good when you're operating on someone's heart, right? But sending that email, that good enough could be, below perfect, let's just say, right? We don't need to spend all that time and energy. So, really thinking about what is good enough in all the different areas of your life and recognizing that you're not going to be A plus in all areas at all times. And that is okay, right? What are those areas in your life, in your work, et cetera, where it's really important to be operating at a very high level? And what are those areas where you might be able to let things go a little bit, right? Can you let the laundry go? Does your house need to be perfectly clean? Like, what are those areas where you can say, you know what, I'm going to be a C plus student, not an A plus student in these certain areas? Now, if you're not convinced that good enough is a worthy cause or a worthy goal, I want you to think about this. I often think about this, which is, let's say you've taken a pass fail test, right? And passing was 70%. If you get more than 70%, you've actually studied too hard, right? That extra that you got, that extra studying that you did, the extra on there, it didn't get you anywhere, right? You're still just got, whether you got a 98 or whether you got a 70, you were still just passing, right? And so just think about where are the areas in your life where passing is totally fine. Now, strategy number five, define what an MVP looks like. So MVP, minimum viable product, or let's say minimum viable plan. So for those days, let's anticipate that there are going to be some days that are a lot harder than other days. And when you notice that you're in one of those days, what's your MVP for that day, right? You don't need to do it all that day. I often think about things in tiers, and sometimes it's like tiered exercise is what I often think about. There are going to be days when I just don't have the energy, the time, etc., but I still want to get some movement in my body. And on those days, I'm not going to go for a 5 mile run. My MVP might be that I'm going to do 50 crunches and 25 squats and 20 jumping jacks or something. I'm still doing something, but it's the MVP. It's not the whole shebang, right? Now, I just gave you an example of exercise, but you could use this in all sorts of areas of your life. Have a plan for when things get hard so that you're not trying to operate on all full cylinders when you don't have access to that, right? When your willpower, your motivation, your energy, your resources are just drained. Now, number six, we're actually going to get into a little bit more of exercise. Move your body. Science tells us that when we move our bodies in some way, in any way, that we actually feel better. It helps us to produce dopamine. That helps us to regulate our mood. It helps us to be more productive. So if you are feeling like you just can't, move your body just a little bit. Sometimes it's just standing up and walking around the block or walking up and down the stairs in your house. Sometimes it may be just doing some stretches at your desk or laying down on the floor and doing some stretches for a little bit. But if you can move your body just a little bit, this is going to help you not only to be productive, but it's just going to help you to feel better all around. And it doesn't have to take a ton of time. And lastly, number seven is to make decisions ahead of time. So I often talk about this as separating the planning from the doing. Because oftentimes when we are trying to plan and do at the same time, we don't do the things that we need to, right? We are not doing that well. We're not making the right decisions for us. It also, like when we are, when we're having tough times, decisions are really hard, right? And they can take a lot of our reserves. Now, decision fatigue is a thing no matter what, right? The more decisions we make, the more fatigued we become with them, and the worse our decisions are. So think about what types of things could you make in advance? What types of decisions could you make in advance? Could you decide what your work uniform is? What's your outfit's going to be? Could you decide on a meal plan, even if it's just super simple, like meatless Monday, pasta Tuesday, or whatever? Could you, like, what are the decisions that you can make in advance? Can you plan your day for the next day so that when you show up to that day and things get tough, you have a plan to go on? Whatever decisions you can make in advance are going to help you to be more productive, to be more on task, and to feel better in the moment. And it's going to help you reserve that really precious brain power for the things, the hard things that need it that may come up throughout the day. So, those are 7 strategies that I wanted to share with you for when times are tough and we need to do a little redefinition of what productivity means so that we can still feel productive, so that we can still feel good about our time and what we're doing, even when we're not operating on all cylinders and when the world just doesn't let us do that. Now, if this video was helpful to you, please give it a like so that I know. And if you want to see this type of content in your feed every single week, then please go ahead and subscribe. All right, see you next week.
Hi, video editor here. Just want to make sure you guys subscribe because only 20% of the people that watch our videos subscribe, so it would help us out if you keep on coming back to our content. Thank you.